I caught my mother-in-law pouring something into my wine glass when she thought I wasn't looking. A tiny vial, clear liquid, quick flick of the wrist like it was muscle memory. She smiled when she handed it to me. "Special cocktail for my favorite son-in-law," she said. I smiled back, raised the glass, and then I quietly swapped it with her husband's. 45 minutes later, he collapsed during dessert, and I was the one keeping him alive on the floor, surrounded by crystal china and shocked silence. She tried to poison me, but I knew something she didn't. My name is Logan Pierce. I'm 33 years old, and I've spent the last 11 years as a paramedic in Portland, Oregon. It's not glamorous, but it's real. I've stabilized heart attacks in grocery stores, carried overdose victims out of public restrooms, and driven through snowstorms with someone's life in my hands. When people call 911, I'm usually the first face they see, and the last one they forget. But none of that ever impressed my mother-in-law. Her name is Marjorie Whitcomb. She's the kind of woman who can insult you without raising her voice or breaking her smile. She was a psychology professor on Saren's seminars on manipulation, ironically, and now devotes her retirement to managing family image, social appearances, and passive aggression at scale. To her, I'm a blue-collar emergency technician who married her only daughter out of ambition. She said as much, just never to my face. Her husband Richard is a retired federal judge, stern, rigid, cold as the marble in their foyer. The kind of man who once told me that some people serve and some people lead while carving his steak. Then there's Claire, my wife. Claire is nothing like them. She's brilliant, steady, and good in the way that makes you want to be better. We met 4 years ago on a response call. She was volunteering at a needle exchange program, and I was there to treat a seizure. We got coffee a week later, dinner 2 weeks after that. And somehow, despite her parents' disapproval, she married me. They tolerated me, barely, invited me to dinners, asked performative questions, praised me to my face, and condescended the moment I stepped out of the room. But Claire didn't see it. Or maybe she chose not to. I told myself I could endure them for her, until the day I realized they weren't just looking down on me. They were aiming to take me down. Marjorie never liked me, but she played the long game. She made little digs at every opportunity. Once, when Claire and I brought over homemade lasagna, she asked if the sauce was store-bought or just lower-middle-class homemade. When Claire got promoted to partner at her environmental firm, Marjorie said, "Well, at least one of you has upward mobility." Richard didn't say much, but when he did, it cut deeper. At our third Christmas together, he handed me a financial self-help book. "Not everyone had the benefit of fiscal guidance growing up," he said. Then he clapped me on the back like it was fatherly wisdom instead of an insult. Claire would squeeze my hand under the table, her silent way of saying, "I'm sorry. I know. I'll talk to them." But nothing ever changed. And over time, I stopped bringing up the things they said. It felt like choosing between her and the truth. Thanksgiving that year landed during my break week. I'd worked 3 doubles in a row leading up to it, including a 911 call where I had to resuscitate a child who'd fallen into a frozen pond. I wanted to rest, just sleep, decompress, maybe hike with Claire. Instead, we were headed to the Whitcombs for a formal dinner that started at 3 p.m. and wouldn't end until someone cried or insulted someone's career. When we arrived, Marjorie opened the door wearing pearls and a cashmere wrap. "You made it," she said, kissing Claire on the cheek. Then she looked at me. "And you brought Logan? Wonderful." Inside, the house looked like a Pottery Barn catalog had exploded. 3 centerpieces, gold-rimmed plates, candles scented like bourbon and pine. Dinner was served in coarse pumpkin bisque, dry-aged duck, heirloom carrots grown by an acquaintance in the Willamette Valley. Richard was already sipping scotch, talking about the death of the American work ethic. I stared at the knife in my hand, reminding myself that violence was rarely worth it. When dessert came out, poached pears with dark chocolate drizzle, Marjorie disappeared into the kitchen. A few minutes later, she reappeared with a tray of drinks. Sangria, deep red, garnished with orange peel. She called it Her signature holiday mix. She handed one to me personally. "Made this one just for you, Logan," she said. "A little something extra. You've earned it." She smiled, but her eyes were watching too closely. Something felt wrong. I followed her back into the kitchen under the pretense of grabbing napkins. She didn't notice me at first. I saw her take a small vial from the inside of her cardigan pocket. Clear liquid, no label. She tilted it carefully into a single glass mine. I stood still, cold, calculating. Her hand trembled slightly as she placed the glass back on the tray. Then she turned and saw me. "Oh, Logan, did you need something?" I smiled. "Just helping out. Looks like you've got your hands full." She hesitated. "Well, yes. I wanted to surprise everyone. Old family recipe." "Looks great," I said. "Let me carry them in." I took the tray before she could object. In the hallway, I swapped glasses. Richard had the strongest liver in the room. Let's test it. He drank it without hesitation. Didn't even glance at me when he took the glass. Claire raised hers. "To family." "To traditions," Marjorie echoed. "To survival," I said quietly and sipped my water. The next 45 minutes played out like every other Whitcomb dinner. Richard talked politics. Marjorie asked Claire if she still had time to cook. Claire rolled her eyes and changed the subject to hiking trails. But I watched Richard. His posture changed. First, he blinked more slowly. Then he began rubbing his forehead. 10 minutes later, he dropped his fork. His face went pale. His hands shook. Then came the real show. He tried to stand up. Failed. His legs gave out. And he slumped forward into the untouched pears. "Dad?" Claire rushed to his side. "Richard!" Marjorie gasped. "What's happening?" I was already up. Cool. Efficient. I slid a napkin under his head, loosened his collar, checked his vitals. His pulse was elevated, breathing shallow, pupils sluggish. "He's having an acute reaction," I said. "Call 911. Now." Claire ran for her phone. Marjorie stood frozen. And I stayed right there, kneeling beside the man who called me unfit to marry his daughter. Keeping him alive. The medics arrived 8 minutes later. They recognized me. One of them whispered, "Hell of a way to spend your day off." Richard was loaded into the ambulance. Marjorie tried to climb in too. They didn't let her. Claire rode with him. I stayed behind to help clean up the mess. Marjorie sat at the head of the table, trembling, pale. She looked at me. I didn't say a word. Just picked up the wine glass. The glass hand slid it into my medic bag without breaking eye contact. The emergency room was quiet when I arrived. Claire was pacing outside the trauma bay, red-eyed, clutching her phone like it was a lifeline. "He's stable," she said, voice thin. "They're running tox screens. They think it might have been shellfish." Richard didn't eat shellfish. I knew that. So did Marjorie. They'd made a point of announcing it during dinner. I didn't argue, just placed a hand on Claire's shoulder and said, "Let's wait and see." Inside the bay, Richard was unconscious but breathing. The monitor showed a heart rate that was slowly returning to baseline. No stroke, no heart attack, just shutdown. I asked one of the ER nurses, someone I knew from downtown Tremato, send me a copy of his tox screen results once they came in. She raised an eyebrow, but nodded. "Off the record?" "Completely," I said. 2 hours later, I had the report in my hands. High levels of benzodiazepines. Not trace exposure, not accidental cross-contact. Full ingestion. I looked up. Marjorie had just walked into the hallway. Perfect lipstick. Perfect hair. She looked like a grieving senator's wife. When she saw me holding the papers, her face twitched. Just slightly. Just enough. She walked over, all concern and false kindness. "Is there any news?" she asked. I held her gaze. "They found something," I said. "But nothing that would have come from dinner." "Oh?" "Benzos," I said. "Fast-acting, high dosage." She blinked once. Oh my. Then came the performance. I wonder if that could have come from his medication. He's been so stressed lately. I know he took something earlier." I didn't respond. Didn't nod. Didn't blink. She faltered for the briefest moment. Then Claire walked over. "Mom, where were you? They're keeping Dad overnight." The nurse said he was lucky someone was here who knew how to respond. "Oh, sweetheart," Marjorie said, pulling her in for a hug. "Thank God Logan was there." Her eyes met mine over Claire's shoulder. And I saw it. The shift. That flicker of fear. She knew I'd figured it out. She just didn't know what I was going to do next. I said nothing. Didn't accuse her. Didn't make a scene. That would have been too easy. Too messy. And it would have made it about emotions. But this wasn't about emotion anymore. This was war. And I don't rush revenge. I didn't sleep that night. While Claire curled up next to me, exhausted from tears, I sat at the kitchen table staring at the wine glass in a sealed Ziploc bag. I'd seen this kind of thing before. Club drugs, overdose cocktails, spiked drinks on college campuses. But this was the first time I'd seen it from across the dinner table. First thing in the morning, I drove the glass to Jason Lee's lab. Jason's an old friend. He runs a toxicology unit for private clients' insurance disputes, legal defense, sometimes industrial claims. I trusted him. He didn't ask questions when I showed him the bag. Didn't blink when I said, "Test it for anything that shouldn't be in wine, especially benzos." "Personal?" he asked. "Family," I said. "And don't call me. I'll come in when it's ready." 3 days later, I walked into his lab and he handed me a folder. "There's no ambiguity," he said. "Midazolam and clonazepam, dissolved in ethanol. Someone made a custom mix-fast onset, strong sedative profile." "How strong?" He tapped the paper. "At least 3 milligrams in that glass. Enough to impair memory and motor skills. Definitely enough to get you pulled over. Maybe even enough to make you black out." I looked up. Could it be fatal? With alcohol? Maybe. Depends on the body. But for most people, it just ruins their night. Or their life. I nodded. "Can I keep this?" He handed me a second copy and leaned back. "You're not bringing this to the police?" "Not yet." Jason raised an eyebrow. "That's not how most people handle attempted poisoning." I looked at the report, then back at him. "She didn't want to kill me," I said. "She wanted to destroy me. And that's harder to prove. But easier to flip." I went home and pulled up the security footage from our garage camera, the one I'd installed the year before, after someone slashed my tires. Thanksgiving morning, timestamp 9:50, 2 a.m. Marjorie enters through the side door. Says she's dropping off her sweet potato bake early. She leaves 5 minutes later, but not before walking around to the driver's side of my car. She's holding something, small, black, taps the window, stares inside. At the time, I didn't think much of it. Now, I knew exactly what she was doing. She was planting the story. I checked the car. Clean. But my water bottle in the cup holder was missing. Claire thought I'd left it at work. I hadn't. I pulled call logs next. One voicemail from Marjorie to Claire 3 days before Thanksgiving. "If Logan's drinking again, you can't ignore it. I know you want to believe he's stable, but he's got issues. You've seen it. You just don't want to admit it." She was laying groundwork. That voicemail. The wine. The plan. Get me drugged. Get me behind the wheel. Call someone out of concern. Police arrive. DUI. Career gone. Then, she plays the savior. I begged her to see the truth, but she wouldn't listen. Claire would break. Her mother would support her through the divorce. And I'd be a cautionary tale over Thanksgiving cocktails. It wasn't just sabotage. It was surgery. And I had to cut deeper. I started collecting medical reports, lab results, security footage, voicemails, pharmacy history. Marjorie was getting benzos from 3 different doctors, none of whom knew about the others. All prescribed under variations of her name: M. Whitcomb, Marge Whitman, MJ Witt. Classic pill shopping. And illegal. I found a note from Claire's uncle, written last year after a 4th of July dinner. Said he'd felt strange after drinking Marjorie's punch. He crashed his car on the way home. No injuries, but he tested positive for sedatives. Blamed the pharmacy. I called him. He remembered everything. I should have known it was her, he said. She handed me the damn drink. Then came the final piece. Richard's hospital room had a smart monitor records voice logs for training. I pulled the audio from the night he was admitted. Marjorie, whispering to him while she thought he was unconscious. "You were supposed to let him drive. You idiot. I told you not to drink that one." I clipped the file, labeled it insurance, and sent copies to a private cloud, a lawyer friend, and 2 encrypted flash drives. Then, I called a meeting. Just family. Claire, Richard, Marjorie, her brother Owen, his wife Vanessa. I called it a healing talk. They showed up Sunday afternoon. Claire thought we were finally working things out. We were, just not the way she expected. We sat in the Whitcombs' formal living room, the one with the piano no one plays and the rug no one walks on. Marjorie wore pearls. Richard looked tired. Claire fidgeted beside me. I stood. "I wanted this to be civil," I said, "but I need you all to see something." I pulled out a small projector, plugged in the first flash drive. The room dimmed. On screen, the Thanksgiving dinner camera feed. There she was. Marjorie in the kitchen, looking over her shoulder, unscrewing a vial, tilting it into a wine glass, stirring it with a swizzle stick. No commentary, no drama, just silence. When the footage ended, I turned to her. "Do you deny this?" She scoffed. "That could be anything. Vitamin drops. This is edited. You're manufacturing a story to turn Claire against me." I played the second clip. Her whisper to Richard in the hospital room. Clear. Undeniable. "You were supposed to let him drive. You idiot. I told you not to drink that one." The room was so quiet, you could hear the fireplace ticking. Claire's face drained of color. "Mom," she whispered. "You drugged my husband?" Marjorie stood up suddenly. "I was protecting you. He's not who you think he is. He's reckless, emotional. He's the reason your husband is alive." I cut in, calm. "You dosed me. He drank it. I kept him breathing until help arrived. I'm the only reason Richard is still here to hear this." Marjorie turned to Richard, desperate. Tell them this is a misunderstanding." But Richard didn't speak. He pulled a document from his coat pocket, thick, stamped, and slid it across the coffee table toward her. "Involuntary treatment order," he said. "Already signed. If you don't check in voluntarily by Monday morning, I'll submit it to the state and press charges for attempted poisoning." Her mouth opened. No sound came out. Owen, her son, looked sick. His wife Vanessa took his hand but didn't say a word. Claire didn't cry. She just sat there, back straight, voice steady. "You've been trying to control my life since I was old enough to say no," she said. "But this ends now." Marjorie's lip trembled. "Everything I did was for you." "No," Claire said. "Everything you did was for control." She stood up, walked to the door, and held it open. "Go home, Mom, and take whatever version of yourself you still recognize with you." Marjorie looked at Richard, then me, then back at Claire. Then she picked up her purse, turned, and walked out shoulders straight, eyes glassy. The room stayed silent long after the door closed. Richard finally exhaled. "Well," he said, "that's that." But it wasn't. Because the next morning, the story broke. Someone, probably Owen, had leaked the hospital audio. The local paper didn't name names, but the headline said it all. "Paramedic saves retired judge at family dinner after mysterious collapse." I didn't speak to the media. Didn't need to. But the phone calls came anyway, from the department, from the mayor's office. Logan Pierce, calm under pressure, always on call. Funny, isn't it? Marjorie tried to ruin me. And instead, she made me a hero. 6 months later, we don't hear from her. Marjorie checked into a private treatment facility outside Seattle 2 days after the family meeting. Claire never visited. Richard did. Once. Out of obligation, not affection. He comes over for dinner sometimes now. Quiet. Softer. He even asked me about my schedule last week, wanted to know what a double was really like. I told him, and he listened. Claire and I moved across the river. Small place, big windows, quiet mornings. She started hiking again. I started sleeping again. Sometimes we talk about having a child. Other times, we just sit on the porch and let the world breathe. A few weeks ago, a letter came. No return address. Claire recognized the handwriting and threw it straight into the fireplace. Didn't even flinch. I didn't ask what it said. Didn't need to. We're done letting her into our lives 7 on paper. Funny thing is, I never planned to ruin her. That was her specialty. All I did was switch a glass and keep my eyes open. The rest? She did that on her own. She tried to erase me, to stage a downfall, but all she did was expose her own. And in the end, there were no police, no lawsuits, no shouting, no scenes. Just one quiet truth. She played her hand, and I played mine better. Now, I go to work. I come home. I live with the woman who chose me over her mother's legacy. And every time I walk past the mirror, I don't see revenge. I see peace. Because sometimes, the best revenge isn't destroying the person who tried to take you down. Sometimes, it's staying standing long enough to watch them fall on their own.